One day you know who you are. Then suddenly, you don't. This is the in-between, where everything shifted, but you haven't caught up yet. If you've ever asked, who am I now? This is where we start digging.
All right, so here's what I want to do with you all this evening. I want to tell you a story about this tree, and then I want to look at a poem with you, and this poem is about trees. And then when we wrap things up, I want to tell you a little bit more about trees. Anyone seeing a pattern here? Yeah, let's talk about trees. In 2012, we moved into our home, the home that we're currently in, Highlands Ranch, Colorado. And in 2012, when we went to look at this house, the realtor, she brought us there, and we stepped onto the back patio. And the first thing I noticed was this beautiful tree right in the center of the backyard. And since 2012, well, that tree, like trees do, it just keeps growing and it gets bigger. And it was growing until 3 years ago, spring of 2023. Spring of 2023. Okay, I go outside. No warning, no heads up, no known reason. This tree just decided to stop blooming. It didn't bloom, which was strange to me because all the plants around it, all the trees around it, everything in the neighborhood was blooming, but not this tree. And what I noticed 2 weeks later was, okay, Ryan, you've got to come to terms with this. This tree is totally dead. So I get out my saw, and I go outside, and I cut down this tree branch by branch, and the only thing I left was the stub, like the trunk, the tree stub, and it's about 4 feet high. I didn't leave it for any profound reason. It's just, well, have you ever tried to take a stump out of the ground? Yeah, so I left that thing. That summer, so this was spring 2023, that summer, I noticed right beside this tree stump, this little, what I thought was a weed coming out of the ground right next to the stump. And I decided to leave it because it was nice and green, and I thought, this is interesting. Let's see where this goes. Next spring, do you know, I go out, and that little, what I thought was a weed, it was actually a little tree growing right beside this stump. And for the last 3 years, this tree has been growing, but it's not just any tree. Check this out. Here's a picture of it. Yeah, that is an aspen tree. It wasn't an aspen tree, the tree before that. Now, you can also see the stump in the middle. Yeah, because I left the stump. That aspen tree just decided to start growing out of nowhere. Where did that come from? Y'all, this is not even fall. When it's fall, I'm going to send you another picture because it's like the most beautiful aspen tree you've ever seen. It like turns the golden colors. You don't even have to go up to the mountains to do your leaf peeping. You can just come to the Canada backyard and see the most beautiful aspen tree. And where did it come from? And do you know, for the last couple of months, since it started blooming, well, every morning, yeah, I stand in front of that kitchen sink window with my 40 ounces of water, because I've been doing that for 4 years now. I guzzle down 40 ounces of water first thing in the morning, and I stare out this window, and I stare at this tree, and every morning I talk about this tree. And my family, they kind of make fun of me for it. Tammy says the other day, she says, oh my goodness, are you talking about that tree again? And I'm like, yeah, but honey, look at it. I mean, it's just so like big now. And how did it grow that fast in 3 years? And it just blooms. And where did it come from? And she says, you're still talking about that tree? Yes, Ryan, it's still there, just like the past 19 mornings you've talked about it. And I talk about this tree. And here's what I would say, a little side note. When you find something really interesting in life, stop and ask yourself this very simple question. Why do I find this thing so fascinating? So that's what I did last week. I was brushing my teeth one morning, and like you, I walk around when I brush my teeth, and I'm in the bathroom, and I walk out to our bedroom window, and that tree just stares at me from our bedroom window. And I'm asking myself, why do I find this thing so fascinating? And do you know the answer to that question is really obvious to me? It is because it's not just a tree. It's not just a tree. It's the whole story behind the tree and underneath the tree and in front of the tree. It's everything about it. And do you know that original tree, the one that was there when we moved in 2012, it was good and beautiful, and it even provided. And you say, Ryan, that's really weird. What do you mean it provided? Was it a fruit tree? No, it wasn't a fruit tree. But do you know, can we get the next picture up? Yeah. That's the original tree. This photo was taken in 2018 because you know in 2018, that June, we started Free Recovery Community in our backyard. And this was actually the second week of Free. Tammy took that picture from our bedroom window. And you say, Ryan, it's getting kind of weird. How do you know it was the second week of Free? Here's how I know. Because that week, Tammy found out she was pregnant with our fourth child. That was unexpected. And that day, she was up throwing up in the bathroom. And she saw us gathered underneath this tree, and she snapped that photo. And do you know, people loved that tree. People loved to gather under that tree because it provided shade. It didn't just provide shade, though. It provided privacy. And you say, well, why is that important? Well, if you know anything about Highlands Ranch, Colorado, the houses are like this close together. The only thing that separates you is the wooden fence. So when that tree died, well, we lost our shade. We lost our privacy because the neighbors are like 4 inches away. It was the only thing that gave us privacy. And these gatherings, that tree, the people love to gather under that tree. I mean, it's some of the fondest memories we have in this place that we call home. And then, no heads up, no reason, it just decides to transition. And now I have to stare at this stump and no privacy, no shade, just grief. And have you ever grieved a tree? And then something new came up. And the thing is, it happened almost immediately, and it wasn't just any tree, it was an aspen tree. And why am I so fascinated by this thing? Why am I writing a whole message about this aspen tree? Because it's not just a tree. It's the story of life. It's the story of transitions. It's the story of going through the hard things and asking, who am I now? And maybe you're staring at a stump right now in your life, and your question is, who am I now? Who am I in the midst of this transition? Who am I after this transition? And what do I do with it all? And do you know I love the Psalms? You've heard me talk about the Psalms up here many times. I love the Psalms. If you're a bit fuzzy on the Psalms, well, the Psalms are just a collection, an ancient collection of poems and prayers from the Hebrew people. There's 150 of them. They capture every human emotion that we could ever experience. If you were to take a Bible and open up right to the middle of the Bible, you would probably land in one of these 150 Psalms. They're found in the Old Testament, or what's called the Hebrew Bible. Here's how the first Psalm starts, and it's a poem. Check it out. It goes like this, just the first 3 verses. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers. But their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are, hold on to that word, are present. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all they do, they prosper. Now, themes of happiness and trees and being rooted. Why was the psalmist talking about these themes? Why does the book of Psalms open up with these themes? Well, history is very important. Context here is very important. The ones who were reading the psalm, the ones who received it, well, they were going through some things. Major transition. They were taken from their homeland and brought into this land called Babylon, where they were living in captivity. You might remember from your high school history classes, 587 BCE, a very important date in history. Remember, the Babylonians came into Jerusalem. They ransacked the city. They destroyed the temple. They took the people out of their homeland and brought them into Babylon, where they lived as slaves. Now, if you are a Hebrew person living in ancient Israel, what is the most important thing that keeps you centered, that gives you stability? Well, it was the temple. I mean, this was like the meeting place with God. This is where they encountered God and one another. And now the temple has been destroyed. And if you are a Hebrew person living in ancient Israel, what is the most important practice you have to keep you centered? Well, Sabbath. Remember, on the seventh day, God rested, and this practice was passed down to the people. Sabbath, and they could rest. And now here they are in Babylon. No temple, no rest, no Sabbath, 7 days a week of forced labor. And I mentioned that to you all to say, can you imagine the anxiety in reading a poem that starts with happy are those? And can you imagine the protest? Dude, you're talking about happiness? You want to talk about happiness right now? Because I don't know if you know, but we're living in Babylon. Man, everything's been taken from us. Everything has been stripped away. We are staring at this stump in Babylon. And homeboy, you want to talk about happiness. And what do we do with it all? And the psalmist says, yeah, we're going to talk about happiness. And what's the psalmist say? He says, their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. And you say, yeah, but Ryan, what do you mean by the law? What does that mean, the law? And here you can't think of just like a list of rules and regulations, but the law was the Torah, the first 5 books of what we now have as the Old Testament. I mean, this was their scriptures. This was their story. And do you know, central to their story, because the psalmist is saying to them, don't y'all forget, you have been here before. Central to their story was when they were taken into Egypt before Babylon. They were taken away from their homeland, living in Egypt under the rule of Pharaoh. And the people cry out to God, and God hears their cries. And God sends Moses to rescue them from Egypt and bring them into the promised land. The psalmist is saying, you've been here before. You've been here before. Don't forget it. And what's the psalmist doing in this very first psalm? He's giving them spiritual principles in a season of very uncomfortable and trying transitions. What are the principles? Acceptance and remembering. There's a passage in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Some of you know it. It comes from page 417, and it describes it this way. Acceptance is the answer to some of my problems today. All right, let's get honest. Acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. All of them? When I'm disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. Unless I accept my life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. Yeah, you want to be happy? You want peace in your life? You cannot change the situation. And that's hard, isn't it? Because I know it feels like you woke up one day and everything changed. I mean, it was major transition, and you had no warning. You had no heads up. No one told you this was going to happen. You just went outside, and you found the stump, which is your life, and it's staring back at you. And that tree that you didn't think much about because it's just always been there, well, now it's gone, and you didn't really realize its value until it was gone. And now you're in transition, and you're asking the question, who am I? Who am I? What do I do now? I mean, think about it. No one told you when you were a little boy or a little girl that you would grow up and you would be in the battle of your life with this thing called addiction. No one told you when you started having kids and you had a little boy or a little girl and they were so innocent and they would grow up to be in the battle of their life with this thing called addiction. And no one told you all the hard things you would go through, all the transitions, all the difficult circumstances you would face. And some of you know exactly what life in Babylon is like. And who am I now? And I would remind y'all, just like the psalmist reminded them, you've been here before. You've been through it before. And you say, no, Ryan, you don't understand. I've never been through this thing before. Yes, you've been through this before. And do you remember all that God did for you? Do you remember all the new, all the good that started popping up out of the ground when you thought the whole thing was lost, it was over? Do you see how all of this speaks to the present? Because we can't change the past. We can't control the future. All we have is the present moment. And what's the psalmist say? Notice the psalmist doesn't say, you will be like trees. You will be in the future one day when you get your act together, or maybe when you become more spiritual, or maybe when you mature some more, maybe when you get a little older, you'll be like trees. No, no, no. The psalmist says, man, when you get to this place of remembering, when you accept the situation, you are, present form, are like trees planted by those streams of water. Whew. Do you know, earlier this week, I was on a Zoom leading a group of people, and I was invited to share my story and talk about shame. And so I shared some of my story. I talked about shame. Then I opened it up for questions. And someone in that group, they're new in their recovery, and he had a very honest question. He says, how do I overcome the shame of my past, my not too distant past? And how do I stop living in that shame with all the things I've done? It's a great question. It's one we all have to wrestle with. It's one we have to come to terms with. It's what I know about this shame stuff is you can't control the past. You can't change it. I mean, you can't go back and change it. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't if you got further down the road. You can't change the past. And a piece of you, what I know, it has to die with your past. There are pieces of you that have to die if you are to go and live on into the present. If you're to recognize the new thing that is growing, you have to let some of that past die so that you don't get stuck in the morbid reflection of your past, so that you can be honest with it, but also live in the present. And do you know, when I was leading that group and he asked that question, I immediately thought of my friend Matthew, who's one of our TechTEAM leads in the back. Matthew, he's our guest storyteller tonight. If you were here last week, you remember Matthew, well, he got really honest with this community. And in fact, last Saturday night, he first got really honest with me and Carrie, and he let us know that he relapsed last week. And we didn't ask him to do this. I had no expectation of this. But then when he came to the service during Heartaches, he got honest with this community, and he told you all that he relapsed last week. And I thought it was incredibly brave. He was set to be the guest storyteller already a couple of months ago for tonight. And then he said he didn't want to be the guest storyteller. He didn't feel worthy. And so after the 5 o'clock service, I asked him, I said, Matthew, it's an incredibly powerful story. Relapse doesn't have to be your story, but for many it is. And you were honest with the community because you need this community. You value this community. And so he's going to be our guest storyteller tonight. And I don't want to speak for Matthew, but I'm assuming some things had to die so that Matthew could be firmly rooted in the present. I'm assuming, Matthew, when you shared that fear had to die, fear of what we would all think. I'm assuming shame had to die. I'm assuming a piece of the ego had to die. And the thing that died, think of your life. And maybe for you it was hopes and dreams and unconscious expectations, but be very careful, pay attention, because when you look down, you might start to notice immediately something new growing right next to that old dead stump. And we have to pay attention. And there will be moments where you look out to the window of your life and you will say, where did this come from? Man, how did this thing happen? It wasn't even an aspen tree. How did this thing start growing here? How did this happen? Where did it come from? And listen, this goes all the way back to 2 weeks ago, Easter. Don't ever let someone come along and try to explain it all to you with a simple set of facts. So if you are a tree expert in the room, please don't explain to me how this thing happened. I just want to live in the mystery because I'm convinced It's like the major work of life. You get to stare out that window and you just get to be fascinated by that work that only God can do in your life. And so I promise y'all, I am going to keep tomorrow morning. I am going to stand at my kitchen window and I'm going to stare at this tree and I'm going to be totally fascinated by it. Why? Because it's not just a tree. It's life. It is the story of life. And I get it, y'all. Some of you are staring at that stump right now. And I've stared at that stump many times. And you tell yourself something has ended, something has died, and something has changed real fast. And you didn't know about this transition. You were given no warnings, no heads up. And part of you is thinking, it's over. I mean, this is just the end. This is how it ends. And yeah, do you remember your bottom? Yeah, for those who've battled addiction or have gone with a loved one who's battled addiction, do you remember the bottom? Well, didn't you think it was the end? I mean, I remember seeing Tammy at the top of that staircase Monday morning, January 7th, 2013, holding an empty bottle of vodka, tears coming down her cheeks, saying, Ryan, what are we going to do? And I would have swore to you that was the end. The gig is up, man. I'm going to lose my career, my life, my family. This is how it ends, staring at a stump. And the truth is, I look back now, and that tree, yeah, it had to die. The truth is, I didn't know how to love that tree. I didn't know how to care for that tree. I didn't know how to handle that tree, and that tree died. And now getting enough experience and enough life, I can also tell you, well, that was like 17 trees ago. New trees have come up in its place, and you remember all the times, all the good started appearing right next to that stump. And maybe you're saying right now, well, you don't get it, Ryan. This one, this really is it. This one's over. Yeah, but what if it's not? I mean, what if it's not? I mean, what if God is already growing something underneath it all? What if it doesn't look the same? In fact, I would tell you, it probably won't look the same because it's not the old tree, it's a new tree. And what if that new tree is actually somehow more beautiful than the old tree? And let me tell you one other thing very interesting about aspen trees. Because y'all, I totally geeked out this week on aspen trees in my research. You should have seen my conversations with Chad. Did you know that aspen trees, they don't usually grow as an isolated individual tree? In other words, when you look out the window and you see that one aspen tree, no, it's many trees. It's not just a tree, but it's often a single living organism connected underground by a massive root system, and these roots stretch out for miles. It's incredible, and I think what it means is it's not just a tree, it's life. And you do know, all of us in this room, we are connected by this massive underground root system. God and community. And Matthew pointed to this all last week when he says, I owe this community my honesty because I value this community. We are connected. And then I found this really interesting fact about aspen trees. Check this out. Aspens often reproduce in response to stress or disruption, fire, damage, loss. What looks like destruction above ground actually triggers growth underground. Y'all think of your life for a moment. Look at your recovery. What looks like destruction above ground, your active addiction, when you were in it, you thought the whole thing was crashing down, but something triggered those roots underneath for new growth. If you let it. If you look at that little weed that you think is a weed and you say, well, I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to let that thing grow. The roots sense the loss, then push up new life. Please tell me that's fascinating to you. Some of you are in a season of loss right now. You're in a season of transition. And I would encourage you to stay aware. Are you able to recognize the new thing that is growing up? And here's the thing, once you recognize it, are you able to just stare at the window of your life and be mesmerized by it, be totally fascinated by it, ask it all kinds of questions? Where did this come from? How did this happen? Is it going to keep going? Your only job is to stay fascinated by it, because you know it's not just a tree. It's not just a tree. So I would invite you to take a moment and reflect. This song is by a band called Linkin Park. Anyone know Linkin Park? Okay, this is the acoustic version called What I've Done. Take a moment.
Welcome back, friends. I had to tease Ryan. He totally took my entire intro, and I kind of already told you about Matthew. But it's all right. I'll forgive you. I can pivot, right? Like I can be my new roots can grow, and I can figure this out. But what I do want to say is what you guys don't know is that we experienced technical difficulties before we started this service. And one thing that I truly, truly love is so much happens behind the scenes. Matthew and Chance and Weston's one of our consistent volunteers. They constantly make sure that we're able to be tape out there on live stream. And I know Ryan already told you the story about Matthew and what happened last week. But I just want you guys to know that this one is a little bit closer to our hearts because we absolutely love Matthew. So can you please give Matthew a warm welcome and join him up on the stage? See, I don't even have to tell you how to turn the mic on because I think you know how to do this.
Yeah, I'm pretty well trained on that one.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know we had talked a few months ago. Matthew has been kind of rescheduled several times, so I appreciate the flexibility. And then last week, Ryan kind of alluded to what the story was. But I want to thank you because that was such an honest moment. And like when you first came in, I was just like, are you okay? And that's all we, I think that Ryan and I cared about. But when you showed up on the 5 p.m. service and you came out and shared that entire story, I think so many people in this audience can, one, relate to that, two, like truly witness the bravery that it takes to come back. But I want to start with your story because when we spoke, you had shared that you had been not a huge fan of the term, so I'll just say what it is, but like chronic relapse was part of your story. This is something that you've experienced before, but this time was slightly different. But I do want to go back to tell us what it was like and how addiction kind of formed in your life, and kind of give us like where the backstory of where you came from.
Yeah, I got introduced to drinking at 18 when I went to college, and got introduced to it in a very heavy like binge drinking environment where, Friday, Saturday, Sunday was pretty much just, the green light turned on and everybody was just kind of going. At 19, I was introduced to marijuana, and that was really when things kind of started spiraling downhill, because I decided that I could self-medicate with a mixture of alcohol and marijuana, instead of taking, prescription medication from a psychiatrist. And so it just spiraled from there. And then, like you touched on, I would get sober for periods of time here and there, but eventually would relapse. So kind of in and out, came into the rooms for the first time in 2022, but still couldn't kind of keep that cycle, like steady cycle of sobriety until like 2024 was when I really kind of got a hold of things for a while. But then,
and that's close to when you came to Free, right? Like when you started volunteer, because you started as a volunteer.
So the first time I came to Free was February 2022, I believe. And then I didn't start volunteering until, I think it was December. It's like November or December of 2023.
And what was that like when you first found Free and you came in? And not only like what did you actually, because you actually didn't just come, then you like ended up volunteering. What was that like?
I found Free actually, my mom was the one who brought me to Free for the first time. I was home from college for the weekend, and came in for a Saturday service. And then would pretty consistently watch online from that point on. But I didn't start volunteering until about a year or year and a half after getting here. And I think it was just because I enjoyed coming here, and it became part of my routine to come here. But it also was at the start of me volunteering, it was a way of forcing myself to do something for my recovery.
And coming in person, because
Yeah.
again, like that was, it's so easy to sit on the sideline or watch from online. And obviously, if you're online and you're in a different city, we understand. I also think we understand how hard it is. Again, Chloe walking in here for the first time saying that she watched, online, and how hard it is to walk through those doors. And I want to tell, like, kind of about the consistency. I'm gonna jump a little bit forward in your story to before this last relapse, and I think it's important because you had found consistency. You were in sober living. You had you had accountability. You had people eyes on you. You had like a predictable schedule, and then all of a sudden, things started to change. You had moved out, you had moved in with a roommate. Can you tell us about what was going on internally? It was on Easter, but can you tell us internally what was going on inside with like your emotions during all that change?
Yeah. I knew before moving out of sober living, I knew that accountability piece was the biggest thing I was going to lose leaving sober living. Which is part of the reason why I moved out with a sober roommate. Because I had moved out of sober living, and I had done sober living in the past, and moved out on my own, and it didn't go well. So I figured, having a roommate who I knew was also in recovery could be that a little bit of that source of accountability for me. But I really, what I found out on Easter was that sober living was a great thing for me. Like you said, it gave me a schedule, it gave me accountability, it gave me a place to get on my feet. It did not, however, give me a place to learn to be comfortable by myself. There's 8 to 9 other people around at all times. And so left to my own devices, I had my brain saw no other option but to go back to my comfort zone.
And that's what you said. And you said you could sit with the secret, but you couldn't sit with yourself, right? And like that was ultimately, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. And luckily, you had gotten back. It was only about a week, right? Like a few days.
Yeah.
But then you took the action. You knew to come back. You knew where you could go. You went back. You left that roommate situation. You moved back home. You came here, and that was the first time you saw us, and you got honest. And then that 5 p.m. service, we did not ask you to. We were not telling you, like, hey, Matthew, you need to, like, go out and own this. But you did that on your own. What was it like those moments before that 5 p.m. heartache? What was going through your head of like, why do I need to get up and walk out?
It's funny. I was talking to a few people a couple of days after that Saturday service, and honestly, I shocked myself coming out of the tech room. There really wasn't anything going through my head other than knowing that I had a heartache, but also just knowing that at that point in time, I think I just felt like I needed to have a community behind me, and I needed to have a sense of belonging for that night, at least.
And I just think that that's absolutely beautiful. And I want to talk about now. So what do you do now? So what, it's like, what, a week sober, right? You now have this. What does it look like? You're back home. How do you start rebuilding?
So I am actually not back home. I'm still in with my roommate situation. I think what it looks like now, though, is that it's a good reset for me because it opened my eyes to some things that I was not doing in my program. Some of the ways that I was not taking the program seriously, and just some little simple things that I just hadn't been reminded of in a while. And so, this last week has looked like going back to meetings, actually diving into recovery a little bit more head on, being a little bit more intentional with, my daily schedule, as well as like just more intentional in all of my actions.
And I think it's so brave that you were able to, again, come up here a week after this happened and still be willing to share your story. I think a lot of times when, we approach people and ask them to be a guest storyteller, they're so fearful because their story doesn't have that like pretty bow on the end and they don't have all the glorious answers yet, and there's still these like works in progress. So I think it's so important to share, again, that like, we can stumble and we can still get back out. I really hope that you guys, if you ever see this guy around, he's here at most tech events. He's here every single Saturday. If you ever come in through the back and you like sneak in a little peek in the back of the tech room, I really think it's important to both him and Chance. So like get to know him, say hello to him. Matthew is absolutely an amazing human. And I want to close with one question to the person who's still out there tonight. Maybe they're scared to admit their relapse. Maybe they're scared to sit with, the feelings they're feeling inside. Maybe they're watching online and they're terrified to walk through that door. What piece of advice would you leave them with tonight?
Yeah, on that part of, sitting with the secret, I saw something this morning actually that said, I have enough paranoia around the chronically ill person that I am to not want to be honest. But it's so much easier it's so much better being honest. I'm one of those people who can build a mountain out of a molehill, but it's always that thing where like I'll come out on the other side and be like, I feel 10 times better having actually just, gone through with it. And also, for the people still suffering too, I think it opened my eyes to how many people I actually had behind me when I got honest. And maybe that's what you need, Maybe you need to have a period of time to just have your eyes opened to the support network you have behind you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Can you all give Matthew a round of applause, please?
Matthew, thank you for saying yes tonight and for being brave. Yeah. Well, the way we close down on a Saturday night is similar to how we do celebrations, but we call these heartaches, the burdens that we carry. The ones that can sometimes be hard to get honest with, the ones you don't want to let people in on. And man, this beautiful thing happens when we realize we're so connected. We have this root system. You have community. You have, you have people sitting around you. You have a God who hears the cries of the people. And sometimes it's just the bravery of taking the mic or being online and typing it into the YouTube comments or the Facebook comments. And that's what this time is for. We take 3 minutes for it. If you need some prayer, some encouragement, some lifting up, that's what this time is for. So again, Colin has a mic on this side. Chloe has a mic on this side. And if you're online, drop them in the comments. For those of you in-house, just raise up your hand. They'll get you a mic. This time is yours. All the way back on the couch.
My name is Ray. I need some prayer from my family. My mom just had a heart attack last week. She says she's doing all right, but it's still pretty scary.
All right, Ray. Prayers for you and your mom and the family.
My name is Marjorie, and I just would like prayers for a very close friend of mine. She relapsed this week, and I'm hoping she's back into treatment, but I'm asking for prayers for her that she will find her way back to the rooms.
Prayers for her.
My name is Letitia. I need prayers for my 16-year-old daughter. She started drinking and won't stop.
All right. Prayers for you and your daughter.
My name is Mandy, and I'm just asking for prayers for my mom who had surgery about a week ago and is dealing with some ongoing health issues. Her name is Jackie.
Lifting up Jackie tonight. Right here, Colin, second row.
Yeah, I'm Austin. I just want some prayers for my brother. He's got it just seems like his health issues keep stacking up, and he's got some big surgeries coming in. So, just prayers for my brother. His name is Morgan.
All right, prayers for Morgan. Very quiet tonight.
I think I have a heartache. So, in December, I had a celebration where I committed very, very publicly to be a servant of a higher power, but from my understanding, it was very Abrahamic mission, meaning I will go even if I don't know the destination. And because of your message and what you choose to say tonight, I realized for the past 3 months, I've been treating myself like Pharaoh. And I cannot serve God in any kind of Abrahamic way and be Pharaoh to myself and enslave myself.
Yeah.
So I have to choose. And it is a choice. And I actually am free to choose.
There you go. That's a good word, brother. Prayers for you, Colin. Thanks for sharing that with us. Anyone else? Oh, we got one more.
I just want to give prayers to my little sister who's having her fourth shoulder surgery. She hit an elk a couple years ago, and has to have the surgery again, but she's soldiering it up and doing it.
She hit an elk, like in a car?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Prayers for your sister. Yeah. Like, she punched an elk? I mean, Mark, he can hit an elk, but I don't,
I was following.
Prayers for her. Sorry, I'm not laughing at her. God, I make things awkward. I do want to mention one other thing. Some of you in the early days of Free, you might remember a young man by the name of Chris Jordan. Got a call from his parents yesterday. Chris and his dad, Steve, would come to Free in the early days, and man, he was such a cool young dude, and this disease is so brutal. It wants your life, and he died 2 days ago. We're going to do the funeral service here on Thursday, and so prayers for the Jordans, if you remember the Jordans.
Doesn't get any easier.
No, we get those reminders and just heartaches, and yeah. Well, Tammy, you want to start with the first online one?
Yeah, Nicole says, prayers for my friends who relapsed. For sure, Nicole, prayers.
Yeah, lifting them up. Deb says, my dear friends who are living and struggling with cancer and their loved ones who are caring for them. Prayers for them. Deb, glad you're joining us tonight.
And Jennifer says, hi, friends, just still asking for prayers for a client of mine that's in the hospital, not doing well. Love you guys.
Prayers for that client of yours. Good to see you here, Jennifer. Brianne says, prayers for my friend Ariel. She is going through a very rough time right now. I believe she is still sober but struggling. I hope she knows I'm here for her. I'm here for her and loved. Yes, prayers for them, Brianne, lifting them up tonight. Ariel, glad you joined us tonight. Anything you're adding, Tammy? No, you're good. Okay, thank you for joining me up here. All right, y'all, if you have been impacted by the mission of Breaking the Silence of Addiction, if you call this place, these people, your community, your home, whatever you call us here, we are funded by you, the people. So first, thank you all so much to those of you that have chosen, for those of you that have chosen. How about chosen to give financially or free? It truly does make a difference here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you want to donate to Free, there's a few different ways you can do it. You can download the app, Free Recovery Community. It's free to download. All of our content's on this app. Meeting schedule, content, guest storytellers. There's a giving button you can give one time or set it up to be recurring to do monthly, or weekly, however you want to do it. We're grateful for all of it. You can do the same thing on the website, by the way, freerecoverycommunity.com, or just outside both sets of doors for in-house people. There's a giving box outside these doors and a giving box outside these doors. And as always, there is the Kind kiosk just outside this front set of doors on the right. It's the one tippy tap system. It's kind of a fun way to give. If you want to give that way, head out those doors. Thank you all for being a part of it. Makes a big difference here. Truly grateful. Chloe, I am sometimes accused of putting people on the spot. Only sometimes. Do you want to help close us in prayer? Come up here and join me. You can say no to this opportunity. Say no. That sounds like a salesman. You can say no to this wonderful opportunity. You want to come on up? Yeah, this is Chloe. Chloe, it's so interesting to me. I find this really fascinating, actually. I need to ask, why do I find this so fascinating? There are lots of people who have your exact story. They'll reach out and they'll say, man, I've been watching online for like 6 months, and I finally decided to come in, and I think most of them say, it wasn't nearly as creepy as I thought it would be. But it's, I want you to know, so I didn't mention your name, but I posted about you on social media today, and I said, say a prayer. Say a prayer. She's nervous to come. I hope she comes. She says she's going to come. She's been watching online. You have people all over the country praying for you tonight, and here she is. And it's a beautiful thing. We're so glad you came. Yeah, you can turn it. Is it on?
I don't think so. What I do?
Is it dead?
I broke it. Oh, no. Okay, sorry. I just want to say thank you all. I was very nervous to come here. I've been watching the live stream for a little bit now, and I'm trying not to cry. This has been very beautiful and welcoming, and I look forward to coming back. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Glad you're here. So what we do is we just close in prayer, and I invite people, if they want, to just open up the hands. Yeah, maybe tonight you're going to be a little more open to the new thing growing beside that stump that you've been staring at. Yeah, the new thing that God is doing in you and through you and all around you, because Spirit is always breathing life. And if you don't know this prayer, well, it's on your screen, and we'll pray it together. I think it's on the screen. There it is. The set-aside prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. And it goes like this. Let's pray it together. God, today help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery, so that I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth. Amen. Grace and peace to you. See you next time. Thank you.